So it's been a while since I've done a Q&A. Let's get to it. First set of questions comes from Hedgehog Wolf, also known as Hector, which, by the way, thanks to you and everybody else who has submitted your questions. I really appreciate your guys' support. Regarding the Jurassic Park trilogy, would you say it's the Star Wars of the 1990s or early 2000s? Yeah, I would say so. And he goes on to say, both franchises have a simple yet compelling story that captured the imagination of audiences worldwide, as well as having groundbreaking special effects that went on to influence many films afterwards. Not to mention the first films are lighthearted, while the second one is darker, and the third installment dials back the darkness a bit. And while not a direct connection, Steven Spielberg and George Lucas are friends, so it wouldn't be a stretch if they gave each other advice while making them. Not to mention both franchises had the phenomenal John Williams composing both movies. Wow. I guess maybe that's somewhat of a stretch, but it's an interesting parallel to think about. Both Jurassic Park and A New Hope, yes, I am calling it A New Hope, they both had a very profound impact on cinema, the filmmaking industry, and audiences around the world. Even after all this time, the impact is still being felt. The only difference I would say is that Star Wars has an endless rabbit hole of potential to dig out of. I'm totally fine with it going on and on and on for as long as it has. And you have other people dipping their toes in to try to expand on certain areas that the movies can't always delve into. Maybe in certain ways they can, but video games, comics, television shows, live action, or animation, there's a plethora of areas that you can delve into. Jurassic Park, on the other hand, there's probably a few ways that you could expand on it. In that case, I would say it's like lightning in a bottle. You do it the first time, it's really hard to recreate that success. And Hollywood has been known to recreate some sort of success, case in point with The Matrix, Indiana Jones, and a bunch of other franchises and properties I can name off the bat. And he goes on to say maybe it's a stretch since both Jurassic Park and Star Wars were heavily influential to people and many others, including himself. But you're not too far off. They were both very influential in their own ways. Obviously, different types of stories, different types of world building, and so on. Guardians of the Galaxy, even though it was part of a larger universe, the MCU, it was basically the Star Wars of the 2010s, and as well as the early 2020s, with it ending with Guardians Volume 3. Keep up the great work as always. Thanks, man. Next set of questions from G. Colby P. Really appreciate your support, man, and all of your knowledge on other films that I may not have known beforehand. And I really enjoy some of our chats through Direct Messenger. Along with Hector, I want to give you a shout out as well. And anybody who really is willing to give me some sort of feedback and start some conversation regarding entertainment, just to get that out of the way. I know I'm stopping in the middle of questions, but just want to make sure how much you guys know how much I appreciate what you guys have been doing for me since I've been doing this stuff for all of you. Who are some actors or actresses that people love but you don't get the appeal to? I don't really like to harp on actors or actresses, really. I'm not a fan of Angelina Jolie. I can't really put my finger on it. I just find her to be kind of bland. She is a good-looking lady. I won't argue there. Acting style, she's never really done it for me. Maybe a couple of exceptions. Mr. and Mrs. Smith, which is on repeat in my parents' house quite often. And another movie she did by Clint Eastwood called Changeling. If you haven't seen it, I won't give away any specifics. I think it's a true story where this mother's child goes missing in the roaring 20s in LA, and they find her child supposedly, but it's not him. And so she has to figure out, is she going crazy? Do people believe her? It was one of the very few times that I think Angelina Jolie managed to show a side of herself that we don't usually see from her. Because when you see Angelina Jolie, you tend to think of like Lara Croft Tomb Raider. Maybe not the greatest example, but she certainly has a style that people like, so I kind of get the appeal, but not really. She's just not for me. Actors, I really hate to say it, but Will Ferrell and Adam Sandler. I'm not a fan. Will Ferrell's style of comedy has never done it for me. I've barely seen anything that guy has done. Elf, I don't particularly care for. There's a couple moments that I think are hilarious, like the whole, these toilets are ginormous, and there's a funny story I have for that, but it's a long story. It's clean, I promise. He was fine in Starsky and Hutch with Ben Stiller and Owen Wilson. It's a small part, mind you. And then he plays the villain of sorts, and then it turns out an actually impactful character emotionally in the Lego movie. So moments like that, I think I'm okay with him, but I find him to be very intolerable and obnoxious with his comedy routine. Adam Sandler, very similar thing. I don't find him funny. I know he was in Punch Drunk Love, which was by Paul Thomas Anderson. I'd like to check that out one day once I find the time to do it. 50 First Dates, I actually don't think is that bad, with the emotional weight to it with Drew Barrymore's character experiencing memory loss every day she wakes up. If you've seen the movie, you'll know what I mean. Other movies he's done, like Mr. Deeds or Anger Management, they were alright, I guess. Wedding Singer, I haven't checked out. I've heard that's considered his best movie outside of Punch Drunk Love. Grown Ups, though? Ugh, don't even get me started on Jack and Jill. I didn't even bother seeing that heap of garbage. Ugh. I also almost said Nicolas Cage, but I kind of get the appeal, I suppose, because his classic freakouts are something that people will never get tired of, even if the movie's absolutely horrible. He at least has some sort of appeal to it, I guess. He's a toss-up for me. I kind of like him, but at the same time, I'm not a fan of his when it comes to his acting work. Like with the others that I mentioned, I don't have anything against them personally. It's just their artistic style that I don't like. That's all. And I guess I kind of answered the follow-up question for that. What's a movie that you like featuring that certain actor or actress? So my apologies for not properly bridging that gap. The second question Colby has, you mentioned after One Battle After Another, you want to get more into Paul Thomas Anderson's filmography. Who's another critically acclaimed director you haven't seen majority of their work but expressed interest in? Off the bat, I would say Wes Anderson. Grand Budapest Hotel, I thought looked pretty interesting at the time. Never got around to it though, along with Moonrise Kingdom, which came out in 2012. I tried to watch Royal Tenenbaums when I was 10. I think that's when it came out in the year 2000. I turned it off after about 20 minutes because I didn't get it. And the style that Wes Anderson, I guess, is known for, his quirkiness or his weirdness, maybe I was too young to appreciate it. I don't know. Part of me does kind of wonder, is he really as good as people say he is? Not sure if it's my thing, but he is someone I'm willing to try out. What's a beloved movie you haven't seen that you don't have much interest in despite people telling you it's really good? Due to the content in it, probably doesn't look appealing to you, etc. Boogie Nights by Paul Thomas Anderson. I feel like I might try to watch that, but considering the subject matter with the porn industry, it's a long story that I don't really have time to go into right now. That might be a little much for me, but we'll see. Some of Stanley Kubrick's movies I've considered watching at certain points in life, but not so sure now if I could sit through some of them, like A Clockwork Orange, and I've seen clips of it. No, that might be too intense for me. Similarly with Eyes Wide Shut. Not so sure about that one, but who knows. And I know what you're gonna tell me, Colby, that I'll never watch Poor Things. Never say never, because I might watch that at some point in the near future. Who are movie characters that you see a lot of yourself into based on their personality? Besides Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker. I guess to get that out of the way, he's very shy and quiet and very sincere and very caring to other people and empathetic. Even to the point where he says to Flash, I don't want to fight you, but he's forced to go into the fight anyway, even though he knows that he could probably hurt him. I feel like that would be me in the fight, because I don't really want to hurt anybody. I'd be lying if I said I didn't get into some serious fights when I was a kid where I could have really effed somebody up. But even then, it didn't turn out to be that bad, thankfully. And also with his crush on MJ and how he feels so enamored with her due to what I experienced some years ago with my first ever serious girlfriend and other girls that I had shown interest in when I was younger. I know exactly how that feels. Some people find that unrealistic. You don't know exactly everybody in this world if you think that way. Other characters that I could name, like Charlie Brown from the Peanuts movie, very similar to my feelings on Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker. He's kind of like the Peter Parker of the comic strip world, if you know what I mean. He's always falling and stumbling. He feels like nobody really respects him or likes him, but he keeps on plugging away anyway because he always finds a way to keep going, even if the odds are stacked against him. Also, Bradley Cooper's character Pat in Silver Linings Playbook. Not just because of him being a fan of the Eagles, although that's a really huge plus. He feels like he's lost at this point in his life. He's about maybe late 30s, early 40s. His life's kind of fallen apart and he's not really sure where he's going to go next. But then he meets someone in Jennifer Lawrence's character, Tiffany, who has some sort of baggage of her own. And they bond over the fact that they're just a bunch of nut jobs trying to make their way in this life. And with Jennifer Lawrence being in that movie, yes please. Not to mention that his father, played by De Niro, is a die-hard Eagles fanatic, just like my own father.
We got a serious situation on our hands, you know that. We got to beat the Giants if we want to have any chance of getting into the division, any chance of playing in the playoffs.
That is my dad. No exaggeration. Least favorite movie starring your favorite actors or actresses? Who? I don't know. I'll have to get back to you on that one. I know you don't review a lot of TV, but outside of some of the comic book and Star Wars shows, what are some shows you thought about bringing or jumping in on, whether old or recent? I'm about halfway through season 2 of Game of Thrones, believe it or not. I know that's probably gonna caused some of you guys to start freaking out and going, oh my god, you're watching Game of Thrones! Look, I had heard about season 8 for so many years after it aired in 2019. Kind of know what happens in it with Bran becoming the king or whatever. I'm sorry if I spoiled it for anybody who doesn't know. But a big thing similar to the subject matter question that you were talking about with a movie that doesn't look appealing to me or whatever, Game of Thrones has a lot of extremes and taboos. I'm able to roll with a good amount of them, but right from the first episode, there was some stuff in there that made me go, oh my god, oh dear, oh my god.
Wow. A whole lot of sex going on here.
There's even some other stuff then.
I feel cheap and violated.
Whether or not I decide to do a video on that of some kind, I'll let you guys know. What are your biggest pet peeves with certain movies? I guess to go with what I was saying earlier about Game of Thrones, sometimes a movie will throw in this very gratuitous romance or sex scene. It's their art. I'm not the artist making it, so they have the freedom to do that if they want to. But sometimes I think they do it just for the sake of throwing it in there, just to get people, well, you know. And as I've gotten older, I've even found myself saying, okay, you don't need to throw that in there. There's no reason for that. I guess one other big one I can think of offhand is when somebody gets hit in the head by a big punch, like in a boxing movie, or a blunt object like a brick in Home Alone 2 where Marv keeps getting hit in the forehead. One brick, okay, maybe I can let that go. 2 bricks, 3, 4, or 5, come on. After that point, he's gone for good. And the same thing goes for Rocky and Rocky 4. The amount of punches that Ivan Drago throws at him, and somehow he's still alive. The guy killed Apollo Creed in the first act of the movie. You're telling me that Rocky is somehow the Terminator?
Come on.
And even in Spider-Man 2, as much as I love that movie, Spider-Man is punching Octavius. He's not taking serious damage because he's a normal human being. One of the counters I hear for that is that his arms are making him super powered or whatever, but that's not really emphasized in the movie. Suspension of disbelief is ultimately required, on some level at least, when you're watching any movie or show, or playing any video game. Knowing your feelings about the prequels and The Amazing Spider-Man 2, what are your feelings on particular movies receiving retrospective praise or gaining a devout cult following? When it comes to Star Wars, I think it's just obnoxious. Any Lucasfilm property, really. Indiana Jones is no stranger to this. Indiana Jones 4 was getting some retrospective praise over the Dial of Destiny a couple years ago. Where were you guys before Dial of Destiny came out? Now you just decided that you love the movie all of a sudden? Similar thing happens with the prequels. I'm not saying that's all the case, because we rarely decide in the present how we're going to feel about any piece of fiction, really. I think a lot of that has to do with hype and the admiration and adoration that people have for the original trilogy, that they expect it to be exactly the way it was when they first saw it back in 1977. But it's never going to be like that. And I think that you just have to watch something for what it is. It's somewhat of a separate discussion. Yeah, I don't know. I'm still trying to figure that one out. And I feel like the Star Wars fandom is just so easily swayed by the bandwagon effect. It's really easy to slash something from the past because of something brand new in front of you. Star Wars has the opposite effect, actually. It's almost like they hate it when it comes out. And then all of a sudden, in hindsight, they go, actually, it wasn't that bad. Oh, now you like it? Look, I understand you wanting to complain about the lack of planning with the sequel trilogy, but that doesn't mean the prequels were good just because George Lucas had all the control and one consistent vision. I've talked about it many times and other people have brought it up too, so it's not new ground. And with The Amazing Spider-Man 2, I don't really see too many people singing that movie's praises, really. Maybe back then in 2014 that was the case, but not so much lately. Maybe I'm reading the temperature in the room wrong. Maybe you could point out to me some big YouTubers that are advocating for it. I wouldn't be surprised if High Top Films has some high praise to say about that one. And as far as any other movies, well, this is a really big, broad topic to talk about. Fight Club wasn't exactly well received. Now a lot of people like it. The Shining, I think, had a similar effect, although I could be wrong about that one. Just goes to show you that you can never really be sure how people are going to feel about something. They draw a hard line in the sand saying, this is how people are going to feel about it, this is what the legacy is going to be, instead of taking a breath and saying, well, let's see what happens first. Now that we're in the digital age, that's even more of a guarantee that people's thoughts on a certain piece of entertainment might change. If it gains some screen time in a movie theater, or if it gets a special release on streaming, maybe a special home release like 4K, you never really know. And last question from Colby. I know your feelings on Chris Stuckman as of late, but would you ever do a review of his new movie Shelby Oaks? Possibly. To be honest, I think my feelings on Chris Stuckman have softened. I heard this interview that he did, or at least a snippet of a video he did with Ryan Wright from Real Rejects. I think I've gained a better understanding of why he's changed his approach to his channel as of late. And really thinking about it in hindsight, he never really had, I think, a really big interest in reviewing movies. Obviously, he wants to talk about them, not like a Roger Ebert or Richard Roper or what Jeremy Jahns does or Zach Pope or any other big YouTuber who talks about entertainment, or like Dan Murrell or anybody from Screen Junkies or whatever. It's really easy to fall into the trap of ripping apart something just because you're not making it. You're just Monday morning quarterbacking. So I think I understand where he was coming from, that it's just too boring, and I find that kind of boring too, which is why I try to take a more measured approach. But if I don't like a movie or a show or whatever, I'll be honest with you guys. I mean, I'm not going to go out of my way to watch a bad movie just for the sake of getting a review and getting a bunch of views up on my channel. I'd rather do it in a way that I see fit. I'm kind of veering off topic here. I think I might consider watching it. I'm not really into horror, as you guys may or may not know. It's a long-winded answer. Yeah, I might give it a try one day. Hey, Future Joe here. There was a couple other additional comments and questions that came in as I was editing this video. So whenever you see me right now popping into certain parts of the video, that's just me trying to add on to what you guys sent in as I was editing this. One final comment from G. Colby P. What are some film criticisms you're sick of people saying? For me, I'm sick of this actor plays the same character in everything, or this actor's overexposed, etc. Those are probably the main ones for me too, particularly the actor plays the same character in almost every movie. I agree with you. I am so sick to death of hearing that. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I haven't said something like that. I probably have, one way or another. But man, whenever I hear that, I literally want to claw my eyes out. Next set of questions from Shahir 2001 Music. Hi Joe, hope you're doing well. I got 2 simple questions. Thanks, man. For Doomsday and Secret Wars, do you think we'll get other surprise characters? Oh, absolutely. There's bound to be at least some surprises. We've already seen Chris Evans as his version of Johnny Storm in Deadpool and Wolverine last year. I would not be shocked if Ioan Gruffudd or Michael Chiklis made an appearance of some kind. Jessica Alba? Maybe, but I don't really see her doing that. But I've been wrong before. Andrew Garfield has made it clear as of late that he's not going to be in Doomsday. He said unequivocally no. You said that last time with No Way Home, so we're kind of wise to your act. But I have no idea. He might be telling the truth. Tobey Maguire has been recently spotted on the set of Brand New Day when they're filming in Scotland. And there's been some discussion of him showing up in Secret Wars, starring alongside Hugh Jackman. I and a lot of other fans would love to see that. We've been begging for that for years. Chris Evans could show up again, not just as Johnny Storm, but maybe as Old Man Steve Rogers. I heard a possible theory that he could face off against Robert Downey Jr.'s Dr. Doom. Kind of like a full circle moment since Captain America and Iron Man were basically at odds with each other from the moment they met. Might be eating some major crow down the road, but I would not put it past the Russo brothers. Second question, will you plan on doing a video on the relationship between Peter and Gwen in the Amazing Spider-Man series? Sharing your personal opinion, because I also didn't like it that much. Yes, I am. In fact, I'm working on it right now. I don't have sophisticated equipment like using a microphone or some really high-tech sound editing or whatever. I basically recorded it in the same manner that I'm talking to you guys right now to the camera. And I'm going to put some clips over it to make it seem like I'm doing a voiceover of some kind. It's about as professional as I can afford at this point. But to answer your question, yes, it's definitely coming. Next set of questions from Kelvin Mendez. What's up, buddy? Still here. Hope you're doing well. Keep up the work that you're doing. Since you didn't have enough time to review the 2003 Daredevil movie and the OG Netflix series leading up to Born Again, can we expect to see this come to fruition with season 2 next year, along with an in-depth review of season 1? Okay. I had that coming. Yeah, I'm definitely going to do that. I'm going to talk about Daredevil 2003 pretty soon. Instead of just putting it off, I'm going to make the time for it, so don't you worry, pal. I'll get to it. Second question, with the Punisher special presentation coming out next year, can you review the Punisher Netflix series leading up to it? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Yeah, sure. I would say so. I remember seeing the Punisher in the season 2 of Daredevil, and long story short, I dropped season 2 after a while. Haven't gotten around to the show yet, but I would like to sometime. Can't guarantee it, but I am going to give him a try. Third question, can you give the Werewolf by Night special a shot? Trust me, it's really, really good. One of the best post-Endgame MCU projects. If you say so, then sure. Thoughts on Mattson Tomlin, co-writer of The Batman Part 2, having a pitch for Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 4, where Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker balances his life as a husband and a father. This is also another question I got on my YouTube Facebook page from Max Stevan. Apologize if I got that name incorrect. Kirsten Dunst said she would be up for it. Sam Raimi said he was open to it, while Tobey said he would say yes if he gets the call to return. And could Spider-Man 4 potentially happen, or am I just inhaling too much opium? Realistically speaking, I'm not sure if it would happen. I think Sony and Marvel are too focused on Tom Holland at this point. He's basically the future of Spider-Man and the Marvel brand. But that's not to say that they can't find some reason to do something for Tobey. Technically, he's already had his closure with Spider-Man 3 and No Way Home, but he did say in a Zoom call interview that he didn't necessarily want to close the chapter, but bring certain resolutions to his character. I'm willing to bet he's had some discussions with the Marvel and Sony executives that there might be something there regarding Spider-Man 4. But the thing is, and I've talked about this in a past video, in order to make a solo Spider-Man movie, one studio can't make a movie without the other's involvement. If Marvel wants to make it, Sony's got to be there. If Sony wants to make it, Marvel's got to be there. It's a long shot in the dark, but I don't know. I mean, a guy can always dream. And I think that's an interesting thing to explore with Spider-Man being an adult, like a middle-aged or older adult. I mean, you could still have him be a relatable protagonist. He just wouldn't be a teenager or a young adult. You could have Bruce Wayne in his 20s or 30s, or Tony Stark in his 40s or 50s, and people still can find some sort of emotional connection with them. Why not do the same thing for Peter Parker? But with Spider-Man 4, dude, you're not the only one. I've been wanting to see a Spider-Man 4 for years. I don't know if it's going to happen. If he ends up coming into Secret Wars as a way to give him some closure.
Suppose I can live with that. Sure.
And his last question is, if rumors of Tobey Maguire returning in the next Avengers movies are true, what characters would you like to see him interact with besides Hugh Jackman's Wolverine and the reunion of the 3 Spider-Men? Pedro Pascal's Reed Richards? Any of the X-Men actors or actresses? I also want to see him have an interaction with Dr. Doom by RDJ, since they both starred in a movie together a long time ago called The Wonder Boys, which also starred Michael Douglas. Next set of questions from Movie Enforcer. What are some movies you think are better than the book? I'm not a big reader, so I can't say. For me, the biggest mistake of the 05 Fantastic Four was how they butchered Dr. Doom. Who do you think should have gotten the part instead? To me, Jeremy Irons or Alan Rickman should have been Dr. Doom. Alan Rickman actually sounds like a great idea. Not sure about Jeremy Irons though. Maybe in a voiceover for an animation? I could probably buy that. I don't want to speak badly about Julian McMahon since he died from cancer recently. Not a great portrayal, but not a bad one, I would say. But hey, I like him a lot better than Toby Kebbell from Fan4stick. Way better than that. But yeah, I think Alan Rickman would have been a good choice too. Maybe not necessarily in that portrayal, because I don't even think an Oscar-worthy actor could have pulled that off. Apparently when James Cameron attempted to make a Spider-Man movie back in the 90s, he wanted Lance Henriksen for the role of Norman Osborn. Do you feel like he would have been good for the part back then? Sure. Yeah, I think he's got the look of very driven businessman, and that's something I think that Norman Osborn is known for, which would play into his Goblin persona, how he's very driven to accomplish his evil agenda. I mean, we saw that with Willem Dafoe, and we're kind of seeing it in the Insomniac Spider-Man video game series, and obviously in other various portrayals of the Green Goblin. But yeah, that's actually an intriguing idea. What's a book you'd like to see get adapted into a movie? The Last Mission and A Boy at War, both written by Harry Mazer. The Last Mission is about a young kid from the Bronx who lies about his age to join the army in the final months of the Second World War. Feels like he's going to go on a great adventure, and due to his Jewish background, he feels like he has a responsibility to save his people from Hitler and the Nazis. But then when he goes on these bombing raids, he has a big wake-up call. And as far as The Boy at War, it's this young boy named Adam who's living in Hawaii, and his father's an officer on the USS Arizona. And we see from his perspective on what happens on the day of the attack and in the aftermath of the following months. I especially want to see that because portrayals of Pearl Harbor in live action, the best one that we've gotten is from Tora 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 back in 1970. Michael Bay's Pearl Harbor? No. I haven't seen the one that's called Midway from several years ago, but that movie, from what I've seen of the trailers, looked like a video game. And I mean that in not a good way. And if you're going to adapt that into a movie, I want someone who can actually bring a sense of visceralness and grit to it. Kind of like what Spielberg did with Saving Private Ryan. Maybe not bring Steven Spielberg back since he's probably not interested in a movie like that anymore. But I guess maybe someone like Peter Berg. I mean, he's no stranger to a war film like Lone Survivor or some horrific events like Deepwater Horizon or Patriots Day. Last set of questions from Ross Johnstone. Thanks, man, for all the support you've given me. Really, really appreciate you. What's your favorite movie of 2025 so far? Sinners. No question about it. And coming from me, who's not really into horror, and for anyone who knows that, I know. I'm just as shocked as you are. Second favorite? Superman by James Gunn. What movie you wanted to like but left you disappointed that you wanted more from? That's a long list. Spider-Man 3 was like that, and I still kind of feel like that. Even after I saw it recently for the Fathom Entertainment event. Had a good time with it, but there was still a lot of stuff that I thought, oh, man, there was so much potential there. Just a huge cluster that never fully meshed together, if you know what I mean. And as far as others, this goes without saying, Man of Steel. I've already said plenty about it, so if you want to know, you can watch my video on it. I posted it somewhat recently. What films or TV shows you have yet to watch that everyone recommends you see? I mean, besides Game of Thrones, there's a lot of shows, really, like The Ozarks or Ozark. I know it's like a crime show of some kind. And I just thought of this one with Matthew McConaughey, True Detective. I've been wanting to watch that for a while, but I've never found the time or even took the time to watch it. And I think he left the show at one point, which kind of diminished my interest in it. But Matthew McConaughey doesn't have a great track record all the time with his work. It's Matthew McConaughey. How could you not like that guy? Alright. As far as movies, well, that's too many to name, so I'll get back to you on that one. Final question, what place in the world do you like to visit or travel to? See, I haven't traveled outside the country. I did 6 years in the military and I never got to travel outside the United States. But my dream locations to go to, Italy, Ireland, Germany, Japan, and Australia. I'm Italian and German Irish, hence why I named those 3 countries specifically. And I've heard people in Germany are very polite and nice, while also being very direct. If you've been to Germany, you may or may not be able to confirm that, so if you could, please confirm that for me. That way I don't come off as ignorant. As far as places in the US, I mean, I love going to Philly. It's not that far from where I live. I go there pretty frequently now, but I always get this sense of excitement when I go there. Not only is it the city of brotherly love, it's the birthplace of the United States. And also, you got the best sports teams in the world. I know, I'm biased, I can't help it. But then there's New York City. Don't need to say anything else. If you've never been there, you need to do yourself a favor and go there. But there's a couple of places I'd like to check out that I haven't been to. Chicago, Boston, and Seattle. Along with Colorado, Denver in particular, and Utah. Always wanted to see the Rockies. And final set of questions from Dylan Liu. Longtime subscriber of mine, thanks man for all your support, and a good buddy of mine to top it all off. Well, I'm not sure if you've played multiplayer games, have you heard of Marvel Rivals? It has a ton of Marvel characters in a battle royale free-to-play PvP game. It has a lot of characters that you're familiar with. No, I'm not specifically familiar with that one. I don't know, maybe I'll try it one day, but battle royale stuff isn't really my thing, and I'm not as into games as much. Certain games I can get into as far as a regular gamer, where you see people streaming on Twitch or whatever, that's not really my thing. Second question, will you plan on watching more British and Asian cinemas such as Japanese, Chinese, both Mandarin and Hong Kong, as well as Korean? The majority of these films in the genres have influenced a lot of Hollywood films in America today. Yeah, there's a couple that I'd like to check out. I mean, these are somewhat mainstream releases in the US, like The Raid or The Raid 2. I remember hearing a lot about that with the fight scenes and the way they were constructed. And Infernal Affair is another one I'd like to check out because The Departed by Martin Scorsese was a remake of that movie. To say that all remakes are bad, that's not true. There's a lot of good remakes out there. You just have to know exactly where to look. And The Departed is a remake of a foreign film, and it's considered one of Martin Scorsese's best films and one of the best movies of the 2000s. In fact, it's my personal favorite by Scorsese. But to answer your question, yes, I have thought about checking out more foreign films at some point. Third question, have you ever heard of Death Stranding 1 and 2? I have not. I don't know if you're a fan of walking simulator style games, but it has a ton of star power, including Norman Reedus, Léa Seydoux, Troy Baker, Mads Mikkelsen, Elle Fanning, etc. Wow. Yeah, that is cool to see how famous people are becoming more willing to try out certain video games, because video games have become just as, if not more relevant than film and television in the last 2 decades, I would say, or maybe a decade and a half-ish. There were some games that were cinematic in the past. Yeah, that is really cool to see. I'm not really into simulator stuff. I tried once where you put that thing over your head, and I lost myself for about 15 minutes. And when I finally took off that helmet, I was so disoriented that I needed at least 20 minutes to compose myself. Can't promise that I'll play it, but maybe. And fourth and final question from Dylan. I've seen a lot of people claiming that a lot of military films are US propaganda. Is that actually true? Because I've seen people state it in films such as Warfare, Top Gun Maverick, Hurt Locker, Zero Dark 30, American Sniper, etc. That's a loaded question. I don't know. I think it really depends on your own perspective and how you feel about war films in particular. Warfare from earlier this year, I don't think it's propaganda. It's pretty simplistic and feels a lot more grounded than most war films that we've gotten, where you actually feel like they're real people. And I know from experience serving in the military for 6 years. Top Gun Maverick, well, with Top Gun, you kind of expect it to be a little bit hokey in certain moments. Maybe that is kind of very rah pro-military, but there's certain parts where Maverick has a moment with Iceman or Rooster where you see a human side of him instead of being this big, giant male bravado presence just because he's a military official. If he was portrayed that way, then yeah, I could see the argument for being US military propaganda, but it's really not. Zero Dark 30, I haven't seen that, so I can't comment. Hurt Locker, I saw a long time ago. The one moment that I remember the most is when David Morse's character, he's this army colonel, goes to talk to Jeremy Renner, who's this sergeant first class, and he's standing at parade rest, meaning that you have your arms behind your back like this. You're supposed to do that when you talk to a non-commissioned officer. Jeremy Renner's a non-commissioned officer. David Morse's character is a commissioned officer. You're supposed to stand at attention, but I guess given the environment that they're in, they don't want to possibly signal to enemy insurgents watching nearby that we got a high-ranking officer in our midst. I know I'm going into these long tangents, but I don't really see that as propaganda. It was a long time ago when I saw that, so I don't really remember much of that movie past that one part that I was talking about. As for American Sniper, I wouldn't go that far. I just don't think it really has the emotional depth that it could have gone for, because there's one moment where he talks to this psychologist at the Veterans Affairs group that he's going to. I'm willing to meet my creator and answer for every shot that I took. But we never really see that struggle. We never really see that moment or that certain set of moments where he goes, oh man, I just killed somebody. Oh, I just killed that woman. I just killed that little boy. How could I live with myself? I mean, there's some intense moments like with the battle and the urban warfare, especially the sandstorm scene that happens in the third act. It's not a bad movie. I just don't think it was as deep as it could have been. But would I qualify it as propaganda? No, I wouldn't say so. I guess if you could qualify it as such, you might talk about how the insurgents are portrayed as evil enemy combatants or something, and we don't really get a whole lot of time with those guys. Whereas a movie like Lone Survivor, we actually see some locals looking after Marcus Luttrell, Mark Wahlberg's character, and we see a human side in the people that are living in the area of Afghanistan, and they're not all on board with the Taliban. I apologize for the long-winded answers, but it's really going to depend on the piece of media that you're talking about, movie, show, or game, and movies in particular like you asked. And it's also going to depend on the person's point of view, and there is a tendency, I think, in America, and I don't want to get on my soapbox too much, where we tend to, I think, maybe sometimes glorify the military, look up to the people that serve our country, and it's, I think, a good thing that we show them gratitude because we ask them to put themselves at risk whenever there's an armed conflict that happens, whether it's a world war or we go to Iraq or Afghanistan because of a terrorist attack that happened on 9/11. And we don't often think of the consequences that come with it, where there's obvious cases of war crimes or friendly fire, like the prisoner abuse scandal that came out in the events of the Iraq War. We'll save that for another time, but if you're curious, look up The Plot of Casualties of War, Michael J. Fox and Sean Penn. That movie will literally rip your soul out. That's how it feels for me. But yeah, I think it really depends on the movie and how you view the US military. But I can also see the argument on how they might be propaganda depending on your own worldview. So those are all the answers I have to your questions. Thank you guys so much for all your questions. And I apologize for being so lacking on the content lately. Had a lot of stuff going on that I'm not going to get into right now with work and some personal stuff that I have with my family. But I'm still here and I'm still going to be putting out some content. I got a review of Batman Arkham Knight coming up soon. And I'm going to try to put out a video on the Batman Begins video game. And maybe a couple other surprises that are horror related. One specifically regarding Tom Cruise with aliens. Thanks again guys for watching. Stay tuned for more content coming from me soon, and I'll see you guys in the next one.